Hello, welcome to the Crackpot Podcast.
It's gonna be a beautiful day to start up a revolution. Molotov cocktails, martini shotgun shells, wild, 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 wild one. God forbid the cops get called. I say the more the merrier inside this free-for-all. By God, I gotta see it fall. I got front row tickets to the greatest show of all.
Good morning, James and Mr. Gray, special guest Mr. Gray today. This is episode 60 of the Crackpot Podcast with LaFond and Lockhart, and we welcome a special guest. So, hello, Mr. Gray.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
It's good to hear from you. You are an old friend of Mr. LaFond's, and so we have talked many times about getting you on, so I'm glad we are doing it.
Well, thank you. I hope I'm not too boring. Yeah. There's a lot to live up to with Mr. LaFond's stories, you know.
Well, we don't have to worry about Mr. Gray making Lynn cry and laughing about it, okay?
Lynn's voice actually is like very soothing, and it gives me hope for womankind, so to speak.
Thank you.
And the little kids in the background are always a good. I like it. It adds, kids running around.
Yeah, they're doing something right now.
What are they doing? Oh.
But it's not the demise of some toy. Right.
Oh, okay. Take care of business, Ma.
Mr. Gray, could you tell us how you became a reader of Mr. LaFond's? Because you are one of the original LaFondians.
Oh,
it's probably the first person that came to the website when the webmaster set it up.
You guys can talk. Sorry.
Can
you hear me screaming? Yeah.
Yeah. I see you looking, towards some action.
That's the benefit of having video is that when I am screaming, I usually mute it. I have a little mute button, and then you guys can keep it going. So I think you found one of the Paladin Press books. Is that right?
Basically, I was like at the time I was a long-haired, very troubled, like 20-something, like the typical Gen X or whatever at the time when we were younger. Gothy. I used to be like a leftist, anarchist kind of, hanging out. Rock? Yeah, hanging out with like cross-punk people. But I was always, throughout it all, the one thing I couldn't, I still had a problem with certain people in the street all the time, and I never, and even at my most leftist, I was like, yo, these black people have a problem, like seriously. I would have people tell me oh, it's because of power and this and that, and it's like, no, screw that. It's like if you're looking at them as human beings with agency, you don't give them any excuses. And that was a big thing. And I came back to where I was living, and I was taking the train a lot, and it was just, it was like when I was a teenager again. When I was growing up, I was taking the subway to school and around the city, and in the 80s.
What city?
New York City,
Okay.
in the 80s. And like, and whenever you went on the train, it was just like, like when they talk about the knockout game, it's like, yeah, when a bunch of black kids are coming towards you or next to you, they're gonna at least verbally harass you or attack you. It was like a known thing, and everybody put up with it back then. I now see what was done, certain things that were done, certain violent incidences that happened in New York, like in Bensonhurst. There was a famous one where they shot the kid, or the thing in Howard Beach. I now see what that was. That was done to basically make it where, white men could not fight with or defend themselves with. I'm not saying that those were defenses, but they sort of were. They can't fight against these people on the street level, the violence level. Okay. Not that you should do anything like that ever, but it was basically like, something bad happened, and it was used to push that, any kind of masculine ethnic type person from New York is just this evil bad guy that you see in a Spike Lee movie. Okay. So with this thing, you see it in front of you all the time. So I started looking into, not martial arts stuff, but like stuff that was like more street oriented, because the leftist stuff that I had come from, they had like books, like, Anarchist Cookbook, which, it's like you look at it, it's like, oh, look at this, I'm so edgy. But eventually you start getting to Lupanics, you start looking into different things, and then, my grandfather used to get the Spotlight, which it's an old, Nero the Pick would know what that is. It's like an old kind of right wing kind of thing. So I was always like,
What was the first Lupanics book? Or the most influential Lupanics book?
Oh, that's easy, man. The Policeman is Your Friend and Other Lies by Ned Beaumont.
He was a Paladin Press author too.
He was a Paladin Press
boxing,
author.
right?
The Policeman is Your Friend and Other Lies. That was like my Bible. And so I was getting into like Paladin Press stuff. And then, what is it? Bouncer's Guide to Barroom Brawling by Peyton Quinn was a really good book. And then that guy McYoung, Animal McYoung, had some gritty books that were like fun to read. It was fun to read. And then this other guy's book comes out, James LaFond. I'm like, who's this guy? Wow, is he a French guy? Really cultured dude or something? And I look at the review on Amazon, and this is back in like 2000, and everyone's saying it sucks. Oh, this guy's stupid.
That's a scathing review.
Yeah, it was really bad. Like, the author's not that smart. And this is when I was like, the internet was still kind of like breaking off. Like I would actually go
days, yeah.
I would actually go on forums and actually discuss things with other people. Like, like it's all just a one-way fight all the time. And so I was in the city. I was actually going to like a kung fu class on Sunday, because I would give the guy $10, and he was a cool guy. I would give his name, but I guess he doesn't want to be associated with this. Really cool guy, white dude named, I can't say his name, but really cool guy, been around, and he would teach Northern style Kung Fu. And, one time I met, and he couldn't make it. And, I didn't have a cell phone back then. So I was sitting there in the hallway of the school, and it was in Chelsea. It was like in, the loft in Chelsea. And I'm sitting there, and there's a martial arts bookstore nearby. So I said, well, let me go in there. And I go, and I see, by the Paladin section, I see James LaFond, The Fighting Edge. I said, that's that book by that guy that people don't like. So, you know what? I'll get it. Why not? It was great. Back then, I used to work Saturdays, and I was off Sunday and Monday. So I'm there, and I'm like, let me buy it. So I buy it, and I read it. And, I'm like, yeah, this guy's bad. Cause he's like all over the place. And I'm like, wait a minute. I read it again on the same trip back on the subway, and I'm like, this dude's talking about everything that I've gone through on public transportation. Black people acting like ridiculous. Crime.
Was this the Logic of Steel or the Fighting Edge?
Oh, this is the Fighting Edge. This is 2000, early 2000. Yeah, I think it was like, January, 2000. I think the book had come out for maybe a couple of months. And, I'm looking through it, and he's got long hair. At the time I had real long hair. I had longer hair than you. I was trying to look like, what's his name? Not Brad Pitt, but I was trying to look like something from the Vampire Lestat or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I was
Brad
trying
Pitt
to.
and Vampire. Well, I don't remember. Yeah, the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah, just something that's like now juvenile and retarded. But you know, and, I had nice thick hair, you know, and, I don't know, it's just funny. I got mistaken for being a woman once, but,
that was always fun. The dudes would be really disappointed when you turned around.
Yeah.
That used to happen to me when I didn't have a beard.
And also, like, people thought I was a hippie, so people would mess with me, and then I would stand my ground, and they would hear my accent, which is like kind of a lower class accent, and it would back them off. But man, I got called faggot all the time, and usually it was black people, and 9 times out of 10, a black person would call me a faggot in the street, and the other one were Italians, full-blooded Italians would call me faggot. Yeah. So anyway, I have the book.
Stop perpetuating this, that Italians are black. I'm really tired of that.
I'm half Middle Eastern, right? Yeah, for certain things, it's just...
You're a garlic eater.
I'm a garlic.
I'm like 57% by 23andMe, but 75% by my, ancestors. So.
Hey, I'm 50% Italian, Southern Italian too. So yeah, I look Italian, and my mother's side of the family's German, and my grandfather, God bless him, he's that old European. He's a short, dark, black-haired German. So we could get into all that about, Varg thinks that the original inhabitants of Europe were all blonde-haired elves. I'm thinking that no, it was short, dark people, that would look like you and me.
Well, that's kind of the point of Europe, is that there is variation,
Yeah, and which means that there's variation, so you all have to be golden-skinned homosexuals. It's funny how you take, our friends, right? Our friends. I don't have to mention our friends. Our friends take the truth as usual that. Oh, the people in Europe are very mixed with different groups. I mean, Neanderthals, God bless my mother. She has a very high Neanderthal quotient in her DNA. And they take that truth and mean that now you have to all be, half-breed homosexuals that just follow the rules of, our friends, in the international community. And it's like, no.
That book, The Fighting Edge, what a lot of people don't like about it is the first 4 pages of me is getting my face beat in by these guys, right?
Because,
so he liked it for the reason why at the time all the martial arts books were like, this dude's a hero, he wins all his fights, he's unbeatable.
Yeah.
And my book starts out, I'm getting my ass beat by this redneck.
But it's such a hook, you just can't stop reading that.
You've actually been in a fight. I mean, you didn't always, when I was younger, I lost or got beat up usually. And then I started getting the better of people as I started getting older, and I started getting more, like my shoulders started getting bigger, like my mother's family, very physically strong people. And reading that, it's realistic. He got blindsided. He was dealing with stuff. He's at work. I've had people pick fights with me at work, and I'm like, no, I'm at work right now. I'm going to get, your mind is divided, which is what they do to you now. Your mind's divided. You don't want to get in trouble. The other guy or person is in full swing what they want to do to you. They know what they're going to do to you. And you're trying to balance things. So who's going to have the advantage? So he got hit with the disadvantage, and the way he wrote it, I'm like, yeah, he's getting his head smashed against the shelving, and he sees blood coming out, and this big guinea is grinding him, into the thing. And,
Mike Quintaval. I call him Gino in the book.
Yeah.
About 70 years old now.
And I decided, because, James took a lot of damage, but in the end, he started turning the fight around. The guy couldn't put him out, and he started going for the dude's, nuts to start crushing him, and he freaked out. He backed away. So he won that fight, in my opinion. He got attacked, and he held his own, and this dude backed away, and then the second part of it, which is, the real thing that ties into the other thing is the total, the total contempt I have for authority and law enforcement. Because then they describe the whole process of how now they find out where he lives because the cops come after the fact as usual. And now he has to fill out the information, and now everyone knows where he lives. So in the end, all this stuff is enabled by law enforcement.
Pigs.
The pigs, yeah. The cops and criminals.
We're very comfortable with that term here.
It's a fault. Like most things, our friends involved with, it's a dichotomy of a false. There's two sides that they're in opposition, and really they're doing the same thing. They're symbiotic, even if the people on the ground level don't realize it, which most of them don't because they're stupid, low IQ morons. Is that they work hand in hand. In the end, and we're law-abiding people, we're peaceful people. I avoid confrontation, right? But in the end, if you think about it theoretically, how come you don't walk around with stuff that you would need to successfully defend yourself, whether you're in Baltimore or wherever, right? Who are you really worried about that you don't want to have the thing on you? You're worried about the criminal? I have this, I might, you're worried about who's going to come for you and arrest you and mess you up. That's why we don't carry anything and we mind our business, because
especially you're already a law-abiding person and you have some understanding of just, even if you don't even get in a confrontation and end up having to defend yourself, but just for having it, you've already opened up a can of compliance. I mean, I'm in California and there's just a million rules.
So I was from New York, so I mean, people always go, "Oh, California is a basket case." New York is not much better. New York just has that financial pit hole place called New York City. If it wasn't for that, I mean, the rest of the place is a beautiful wasteland upstate, but the rest of it's just, depressed and everything. And it's going to go the same way as California. So, when people jump on California, they should jump on New York just as hard.
Yeah, I'm used to the California hate. It's okay. It's good real estate, though. That's what I try to tell people, if it falls into the sea, you're going to miss all this beautiful nature. But
the state of Jack London, the most masculine, man of, the last century in terms of literary stuff. I mean, even when you read the McYoung stuff, I mean, California was a tough place. I mean, they were, really, the people are descended from, prospectors and stuff and the last frontier kind of people. So it seems to have a rough edge of the American, whatever you want to call the European descended people that were there. But now, everything, it's even where I'm at now, everything is generated visually. You could see people physically changing, the men changing into something else, and the women, and that's separate from any, outside invaders or things like that.
It's true. It's more than one thing going on.
Yeah, his book, I read that book, and I was obsessed with that book for months. I read it over and over, and it just was this. It was hilarious too. The thing about him is that it was funny. He was the funniest guy I read. The way he would describe it, and it was a Northeasterner. He wasn't from New Mexico or out west like the other guys were. And so it resonated. So that's how I met him. I eventually wrote him a letter back when he wrote letters.
Yeah, I got a package from Paladin Press that Donna Duval sent me in 2001, I think, right as The Logic of Steel was coming out. He didn't just write me a letter. He also wrote me stories, accounts for my research, because at the end of the book, it showed that I was collecting information for a violence study. And he sent me some stuff that he had been involved in and he had witnessed and everything. So that was pretty fascinating. I don't know which one of us called the other one.
I think you called me.
Okay. Sure. And he was coming to Baltimore. I found out he was coming to Baltimore for a comic book convention. Right down. And I used to walk by this and see all these freaks going in and out of this comic book convention. I used to walk right by there on my way to work. So I worked in South Baltimore. So, I was like, let's meet in Riverside Park, because that's where Chuck Getz and I sparred. He showed up there and I handed him a leather hand strap and a blunt knife and a pair of goggles, and we stabbed each other. It's like the first thing we did.
That's cool.
Very cool. I was going to a comic book convention. That's in Baltimore. So when I saw that, I said, okay, I have an opportunity to meet this guy. I need to meet him. And, I used that. And I went to that convention also with my girlfriend at the time. So I think she came the next day. I went, I it's funny. I always remembered it. I felt like the first time I met you, I brought her.
No, you didn't.
No, so I wasn't that stupid, to bring this young woman into an already alien city, which had a reputation back then too. Like everyone was like, "Oh, Baltimore!" Like one of the black dudes I worked with, who was a shady dude, was like, "Oh, Baltimore's grimy." Like he wasn't gonna mess with that place. And this dude was like talking about like buying guns in South Carolina and selling them again, and he's doing this for work in front of us.
Well, the second day that I met him, he comes walking up through Riverside Park with this pretty little girl on his shoulders.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, but he carried her around because she had a breathing problem, and it was real hot. It was like the first week of August or something like that. And Baltimore is not as hot in August as it used to be, but in August just used to be unbearable. And I was like, this is a good guy. I mean, this is. Yeah, and actually, the way things work in Baltimore, you could have walked anywhere with this girl on your shoulders in West Baltimore and never bothered you. Yeah, no, not at all.
Just weird enough to.
It would have been like the Aztecs when they first saw Cortez, and they're like, "Is that like a giant deer with a human head and arms?" I mean, the superstitious thing alone would have, because any of those dudes would have been slapping her and saying, "You're throwing up, bitch. Come on." Yeah. So it wasn't registered. Yeah, you'd have been perfectly safe.
It was Light Street.
And also the dynamic with like black dudes then with like long-haired white dudes. That's one of the reasons why I survived was because of my hair. Because at that time, like the white dudes that would drive into Baltimore to buy their cocaine from the black guys, they were the ones that were trying to pick fights with me. Most of the older black dudes were like, oh yeah, they were whooping up on hippies like you back in the day when they were beating us up. And the younger black dudes, the few long-haired white guys in Baltimore were usually nasty guys.
Yeah,
it wasn't culturally as far along where they were like hippies or something. And in Baltimore, you never really had them. It went like right to 70s grunge and like skipped the 60s.
I remember boss at the supermarket when I meant to meet him, I think the other time. And I had long hair and a bandana on, and his boss was like, he like
big redheaded dude.
Yeah, and he folded his arms like this, like the big, how do I call it? The big fat white German-looking descended merc in the Northeast. The guys are always like this. They're all over Pennsylvania. Back in the day, they didn't like me, and now that they're not doing so well. Health guys, a lot of those guys are breaking down and now living in a world that despises them, and I have no sympathy for them personally. But, that guy, I remember he folded his arms, and I always remember how much he did that. Like, yeah, there's Mr. LaFond around. And then when I meet James, I told him that. He goes, oh yeah, he doesn't approve of you. When he does that, it means he doesn't like you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the dude hated me. And he actually tried to get rid of me, and I chewed him out in front of the whole night crew. He set up this thing where he was going to like castrate the night crew, and I just got up in his face. It was actually assault. What I did was a very silent form of sophisticated assault. I intimidated the hell out of this giant Germanic Irish monstrosity with a big square head and a mop of red hair, and backed him down. He made the mistake of lining the grocery manager and the night captain up across from him, and he was standing by himself. So I just stepped forward and hijacked it. So then he came to me and he made a truce. Okay. And he even asked me for advice because he knew the night crew guys and the grocery manager and the night captain, they all hated me too. He's like, how these guys fear you? He said, how do I get them to fear me? I said, well, what you do is you get the grocery manager and the night captain next to you. You put the night captain between you and the grocery manager. You're both big fuckers. Okay. And he's this tall, skinny, squirrely guy. And then you stand there and you threaten the whole night crew and make sure that I'm on your far right so I can't get in the way. I'm as far away from you as possible. And every time you threaten the night crew with what they have to do, you point at Scott and you say, or I'm going to fire him, or I'm going to fire him, or I'm going to fire him. And then he does this and it works out perfect. These guys are shaking. And I wait as everybody files out. And he walks by me and he's like, how'd I do? I said, great, man. They fear you. They hate you as much as they hate me now. That's what I needed. He's like, we got to make a deal or something. You know, is there anything I can do with the schedule? So that was the guy, Jeff Green. He's gone now. I mean, him and I ended up actually being effective allies because we both had the same enemies, so it was a good, good retail food, the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation.
We met 2001. We met a couple of months before that event in September. It was it was an interesting year. 2001 to me was the last year of my old life, I guess. And then
you came down a spar with us with the smell of burning bodies and plastic in your nose. You still couldn't get the smell out of your nose.
I used to work in the city when 9/11 happened, and it was man. I was with my girl. I guess it's a 9/11 story. You won't have, but I was upstate New York, and I had to go to work that day, and I was going to drive in, and I was going to drive my girl, take her home first, and then go. So I was going to leave early, and then I was listening to the radio, and then that thing happened, and then nobody could get into the city that day, and then the next day they called me in. And they said, please come to work. And I'm like, yo, come to work. They said no one can get in. Please, we need you. Now, I worked in the shipping department, so nothing was getting shipped, but whatever. I went in, and when I drove from upstate with my girlfriend, you could see the smoke going up 11 miles up into the sky. It really was. I mean, looking at it now, what's the word? It's beyond, it was always horrifying. It was something crazy, because you had seen these buildings. Where I grew up, you could see the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, anywhere from the outer boroughs. It was so tall that you could see it from Brooklyn, Queens, whatever. You always saw the things if there wasn't enough tree cover or an apartment building in the way. So to see that happen was damn, And then when I took the train in, it smelled horrible. It was burnt. It was people walking around in the days. But at the time I was angry. I remember when it happened, my girlfriend was crying, and I was angry. I was punching the wall. And meanwhile, it's I thought me and her, we were the misanthropes. And then when something actually happened where a lot of people died horribly, we were upset. So I felt kind of now of course I look at 9/11 from, totally different, perspective, a historicist perspective now.
Well, you've lived through a lot of eras in New York City. I've never been, but we learn about how it was super dangerous and then kind of got cleaned up, and then of course 9/11, and now it's declining again. So can you talk about how that's affected you, because you don't live there anymore, but you still have people there, right?
Well, the thing is that it's
you grew up in the Koch era, right? In the 80s?
Yeah, well, I was born in the early 70s. The odd thing is that even in New York, right, I don't remember the time when you had big families anymore. So my dad's family was huge. They got decimated by America, the way America is. My mother was not from New York. My mother grew up in Pennsylvania. So when she went there, and then it didn't work out with my father and her, it was just me and her. She was a single mother. I had no cousins, cause when you get divorced from the Italians, and this happened with my mother's second husband, when you get divorced from the Italian family, you disappear to them, right? Now, I'm not saying it's Italian. I'm just saying whatever. This is what happens. I mean, this is probably everybody. The point I'm making is that it was just me and my mother. So I had no cousins. So when the Italian kids across the street or across the avenue would pick on you, I had no one to help me, And I grew up where the Koreans and the Jewish and the Puerto Ricans grew up, in a garden apartment. So I was going up there with my mom, and my mom worked real hard. And the way it was back then was, I don't know, if you left your bike somewhere, it got stolen. People would break into your apartment all the time. My stepfather had his car broken into semi-regularly. It was just a fact of life that people would rob you, and people would get beat up and stuff like that.
The bars are still all over all the windows. When I was staying with you in Queens, it's the place is so peaceful. You could sleepwalk on the street, but you can definitely see the signs where at one time This was just an open hunting zone.
Oh, yeah.
All the iron bars and everything. All over everything.
And where my friend lives now, one of my oldest friends, it's still like that. They just kept the bars up from the 80s because it's still, I mean, you know, it's not as safe as, it's the worst. Stuff still happens. It's just now that it's not, they always have that graph where they go, oh, the crime is down now, stop complaining. And it's like, okay, look at the crime level from like before the war. Okay, it's a certain low level, and then it shoots up real high, and then the graph goes down to half of that. So, okay, it's better than it was at the high, but it's still not as good as it was before.
Oh yeah, when you actually had a
you just and you know
had a coherent society. But the subways, I hate the subways. I've been on them a couple of times now. I absolutely hate them. I like trains, but I absolutely hate the subways, and I really hate the subway terminals and everything. I remember in the 70s seeing that movie, The Warriors, which I know was a weird fantasy movie about gangs in New York. But what was it like on subways in the 1980s? Like, were you like what would be considered a latchkey kid?
I was, well, that's exactly.
We had to let yourself in.
I was exactly a latchkey kid. I used to be able to walk to my elementary school, and then my junior high school, which is what they called it back then, they didn't call it middle school. I had to take the bus. And so taking the bus and you know, it had a lot of fun on the bus. And then, high school, I had to take a subway. So it was about 1987, I think. And, when I went on there, I remember for the first week, the subway was still 90 cents. You had the old tokens with the slot in the middle where it was like cut out. And then, a week later, it goes up to $1 and everybody was outraged. I remember, like, oh, how are you going to make the subway $1? It's going to hurt poor people and da-da-da. Whatever. So, yeah, so I taken the subway in 1987 as, what was I, 13 years old? You know, and yeah, it was.
Was it like it is now where there's always some nice, broken down, homeless, melanin rich individual that wants to hold the door for you and ask you if you need help hailing a cab or anything, or were there actually like Amish hunters out there?
Nah, well, the funny thing is last time I was on the subway, you know, the homeless resurgence and bumps, because we have like a commie mayor in de Blasio, and so now there's homeless people. Like I haven't seen that since like the early 90s. Like it's like stuff like that is coming back.
There were 5 dudes that were living that block that I stayed in Chelsea in Manhattan, where I slept on the sidewalk under the GNC window. There were 5 dudes that was their block, and they said hi to me.
Yeah, no, you know.
And that was an upscale place. I mean, I wake up, you know, with this dog sniffing me that's on a leash, and some dude in flip-flops and boxers and a wife beater eating a bagel and reading a newspaper is waiting for his dog to get done sniffing me. I mean, so he was a pretty well-off dude, and they had these like gated apartments and everything.
Well, that's the thing.
They look like palaces in the recess.
It's Blade Runner, if I could say it. Like when I was younger, yeah, the violence and crime was more widespread, but that was actually probably a good thing because you had like healthy reactions. Like you still had ethnic white people that would, if a guy was robbing their car, they would beat the hell out of him or something, right? Or, you know, just basic things. But yeah, when I was in high school on the train, you know, when you get out of school, it was the same story. It's the same story today. You'd have black kids in groups going around, robbing you, attacking you, and doing all the things.
Who'd they most commonly target? What groups of people would they target?
Well, no, white people and Asians.
Okay.
Asian
So it's
people.
the same, like, gray population that Colin Flaherty is always pointing out on
the thing with
videos.
The thing with Colin Flaherty is, like, I laugh because, I mean, he's great. The guy does great work. I like that he pretty much just, he just stays on the point of it just to beat you over the head with it. And, that's why he's like one of the first guys they threw off, because he's actually doing something that is useful. He's not like, you know, Richard Spencer just talking about how he's like Napoleon and shit like that. Yeah, it was like common back then, you know, the same thing, you know, and it's always happened. Even when New York was safer, and it's the irony of ironies that you get Giuliani in, who's a law and order guy, whatever. He comes in, what does he do? He brings the crime down to half the levels that it was in the early 60s. Okay? When you really think about it, oh, crime is non-existent. No, it just went to half of what it used to be in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But it's never like the 1950s anymore, right? So he does that, cleans it up, whatever. They lock up a lot of people. I don't care. I'm not, we locked up all these young guys. I don't care. Fuck them. Excuse my language. And, but what happens is what happens with that success. You do that, okay? You just pushed out criminals out to like where I lived a little more, but a lot of them moved to Pennsylvania apparently.
Oh yeah.
and you know, other states, Connecticut, right? And,
dude, there's a town in Massachusetts that's got like 150,000 Puerto Ricans in it.
Yeah.
I forget which one.
That's great.
That's kind of like Katrina did that to Houston and other towns. It like blew up New Orleans.
I know Lafayette, Louisiana was complaining about all the people that went there, but a lot of people bypassed it because they weren't taking that in Lafayette. Lafayette is like the Cajun city, and New Orleans is like the other city. Hey, you know, and then a lot of them went to Houston because Lafayette wasn't going to tolerate it. There's a cool Confederate statue in Lafayette of one of the French. He was actually, I think, a French-speaking guy. He actually went to West Point and couldn't speak English,
Wow.
but he, you know, they fought damn hard against the Yankees. But anyway, I keep getting off my tangent. I'm sorry.
You're doing great.
I'm just saying. The funny thing about New York was Giuliani comes in, does this stuff, makes it safer, gets rid of all the cool stuff. Like me and my friend from Philly, my boy, he's like one of my best friends, Puerto Rican guy, and me and him after work, we used to get beer. Okay, and the whole thing was you put the beer in a paper bag and showing respect. Okay, and the cops leave you alone. Well, when Giuliani came in, we started getting tickets for that. We started getting, you know, stuff like that. You know, if you got caught if you get caught urinating or something at night somewhere, you know, because you were drunk, like, you know, I used to get drunk back then. You know,
dude,
it
costs $7 to urinate in New York.
Oh, yeah.
City. Manhattan. I found that out. I mean, you have to go. I mean, I don't want to get arrested for, you know, peeing in the gutter, and I also don't want to pee in the gutter. So I'm going to pay to buy a drink somewhere at some establishment so I can use their bathroom. Right. And then a couple hours later, well, I got to pee again, so I got to go buy another drink somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, and a sandwich is $30, so that's out of the budget.
If you buy was it mini spare part, go to Barnes and Noble. You can go in the bathroom.
Well, there's not going to be a next time for New York.
That's what you say. I know that place keeps drawing me back too. You know,
no next time for New York and me.
So Giuliani cleans it up, all right, and there's a lot of other stuff there, right? So then what happens? Then hipsters come in, right? They go into parts of Brooklyn like Williamsburg, which is still a rough area, but they go in there because it's cheaper than Manhattan, right? And then one by one, slowly, everything goes up in price because it's safer, right? So, you know, it's because they've just concentrated the crime and kept it more in areas through the policing, whatever, I don't care. So then now you have a totally democratic city, right? You know, other than the only people that vote Republican are Italian guys like in Marine Park, Irish guys who are firefighters in the Rockaways, and all the Orthodox and Hasidic Jews are the only people that vote Republican.
Oh, how funny.
And, yeah. So,
Holy Alliance, those three groups, right?
Well, I mean, I guess they're technically like white ethnic people that have lived there for generations, you know, which is not what they want in New York. They want, you know.
They want bug people.
They want bug women.
Yeah,
right.
hipsters.
Bug women.
Right. Portlanders. They'll breed them in Portland and Seattle and send them to Manhattan.
Yeah.
Queens.
And I always.
There's a certain number of people who do that. People think, oh, I want to make it in New York, and it's all bug people from the rest of the country that go and try it out. And right, I knew a couple people who did that from my youth.
Like 2003, like, you know, it was like a lot of hipster stuff started getting big, like Williamsburg, and it spread out to Greenpoint. So all the Polish people there that kept their property are doing pretty good money wise, you know. But you know, so you did that. So all your Republican governor, your Republican mayor, law and order mayor, America, pro-America, all this, you ensured now that you have a city where it's all Democratic, you know, AOC, anti-white, you know, totally left-wing,
Sanctuary.
you know, sanctuary city, you know, let's put your boy in a dress one day, mandatory, you know, all that kind of garbage. But where did it come from? It came from a law and order Republican enabled that in the end, because you had the safety part of it anyway, and then the money stuff was always there, because New York, right? Money, financial.
Well, we got your police chief for a while to try to clean out Baltimore. It was Ed Norris, and he got bounced out for some kind of corruption charge. I think he might have done a little bit of time from Baltimore, and he's got a radio show still. He's had a radio show for like 10 years. And he's like in tight with the boxing and jiu-jitsu MMA community in Baltimore. Seems like a pretty cool guy. I actually used to talk to a cop that was on his personal detail that used to travel around with him. So, that was an interesting thing between those two cities, but there was so much pushback from him doing the Giuliani program in Baltimore, which in some cases was insane. Like when they arrested 100,000 guys in 1 year,
Wow.
Well, like minor charges, and then kick them out. It's like everybody I knew got arrested in this 1 year for some kind of minor bullshit.
Yikes.
It served its purpose of like being a dragnet where you're arresting every guy that's got his shoelaces untied or has, looks like he's coming out of a bar and he might have an open container. You arrest every one of those guys, you do end up scooping up a bunch of guys that have warrants for them. But then the guys that had those warrants get released by the Democratic judges anyhow, and they're out there shooting people in a couple of months. So it doesn't really accomplish anything. It drove a deeper racial wedge in Baltimore than had previously existed.
Yeah, so Baltimore, it doesn't work. They arrested a lot of people. It didn't work in Baltimore because of different things. I mean, in the end, New York is what it is because it is the financial, it's one of the evil cities of America, The outer boroughs have totally changed, where you had residents, where you had, the ethnic, white people and other peoples too, and now, half the places, immigrants who get to be their little, their servants, and you have the bug people and the really rich people and this and that, and that's what New York is mostly, the little ethnic enclaves that are left, but the average age of the person in that, unless they're the Hasidim and the Orthodox, is pretty old. You're not going to have any more Italians in Mill Basin or Bay Ridge anymore. They're getting, taken over by, well, people move in, Arabs. I mean, Flushing, where I lived for a long time, is literally becoming China. It's like a colony of China. And, the old white people houses, the person dies and then the Chinese buy it and then they turn it into a Chinese fortress. It looks really cool. They got the stone, statues and the gates that the fuck you gates, don't come in here kind of thing. It is kind of cool, but, it's the same thing as when, the Europeans come in and took over from the Indians. It's the same historical process unfolding, and it's all for the same purpose: cheap labor, a wealthy elite that sees people as just commodity.
Yeah, and churning, the transactions, driving more transactions, buying and selling. You can't, instead of having a family stay in one spot for 30, 40, or 50 years, you have people moving up.
They don't want that. They don't want roots and families and traditions. They want the bug man and the bug girl in their room alone. I forgot. I think it was was it Alan Bloom, the closing of the American Mind? I forgot. He was one of those guys. I think the neocons liked him a lot. He was like a gay Jewish Nietzschean though. And he wrote about that, the end game of this is a guy in his room alone doing something that I don't want to describe in front of you, listening to his Walkman. I mean, adjusted for technology. That's
just
essentially
like hive life, right?
The hive life, right?
Yeah.
The bug man life.
Yep.
And I don't know, the bug woman. I guess there's bug women too. I guess you would call them something else.
Yeah, there's some. I remember reading somewhere about trying to figure out what to call them. So I just say bug people, because that's the other thing, is there's not that much difference between bug men and bug women. You know, they have
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Exactly,
The
right.
difference in shoulder width is diminishing.
right, have similar habits and appearance. Well, you mentioned your accent, and we've talked about how all these neighborhoods have changed, and I think maybe, is that going to go away? Like, now that all those populations have been replaced, it's hard to imagine that, some of these accents might even cease to
This
exist.
man happens to be an expert on East Coast accents.
Tell
Go,
us.
go.
Yeah, some expert. I remember there was this woman. Like, I don't know what you call an accentologist. I mean, I'm really showing my ignorance here, but she was this woman. She said that the lower class New York accent, because you know that there's an upper class New York accent. What's his name? Matthew Broderick. If you know that actor, he's a lame ass actor. And this guy,
Ferris Bueller's
Day Off. And this guy I knew, I won't say his name, he's a guy I used to know. He was from, it's an Upper East Side accent. It was this weird nasally kind of accent that basically, if you listen to Matthew Broderick talk, he has a New York accent that's a native Manhattan accent that sounds nothing like what I have. This woman basically surmised that the lower class New York accent is descended from the London accent. And of course you go like, how the hell do you get that? But then like when I talk, when I really get like my accent comes out, usually when I'm like talking to another New Yorker of the same thing, or if I get really angry, like things like better, like I say, like the T, what is it? I say that, I don't say that. I say, what's that? What are you doing? This, that, them, those. That's like the old joke. But like better, like I don't enunciate better. I say better. Just like a cockney says, you better do this, mate, or something. I go better. So it just, and you have these accents all over wherever there was a port. So San Francisco, New Orleans, you have this similar kind of lower class accent that seems to be derived from this original London accent. But in terms of what it means now is the young New Yorkers who are white, which are not many left, that I've seen like in Queens, they don't sound like me. They talk like people on television. They talk like Canadians, or something, or like people from Hollywood. They talk, I've had to do that at my old job in order to talk to some people, and even at the job I have now, to understand. I've had to enunciate myself. And when I enunciate myself, I think I sound way more feminine when I talk. It's the only way to have people understand what I'm saying, by talking and saying everything out. I hate it, but it's the only way to communicate with some people, because I have like the South Brooklyn mumble accent where like people don't understand me if sometimes, and also like I don't always communicate at the best way. But whatever, bottom line is I'm like the youngest guy that still has this accent. You still have guys out in Suffolk County that have it, and New Jersey, because that's where the people went. Like Huntington. Huntington is like an old school New York place. There's ethnic white dudes out there that will beat you up in a bar fight and not take stuff from people. Like Matt Serra is an example of that. And he has that Long Island accent where they really stretch it out, which is obnoxious to me actually. But he's a great guy. I actually met him. He's actually a really cool guy.
Used to train at one of his clubs.
Did I?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. But
I don't think Matt will get in any trouble. He's a big boy.
Matt is actually he's a really good guy. I know people he has that he's a really good guy. Anyway,
the mudmouth, the mid-Atlantic mudmouth accent that I have. Where's that?
Well, no, his is, the Baltimore accent too. the guys in Philly and Baltimore sound somewhat similar with some differences. But I don't know where, it's all English accents in the end. We know the Southerners.
From Liverpool? I thought,
well, probably, Liverpool is like, apparently, like, Liverpool.
It's the second port.
That's where if you went to New York back in the 1890s and you were going to go to England, you went to Liverpool. You went by Ireland and you went to Liverpool, and it was like a 9-day trip. And, so you have guys coming back and forth. So between the Cockneys and the Liverpudlians, I'm not even going to try to do that accent. I think that's where a lot of stuff comes from, the lower class accent. And then the Southerners and the people here in Pennsylvania and Maryland, that actually comes from probably the farmers or something from England, like the West Country people. Like if you ever see that movie Hot Fuzz,
yeah.
If you notice the accent of the place that he's in, and of course he's the London guy, so he looks down on everybody. they talk in this weird accent that like is usually the farmer's accent.
It's like Northern England, I think, right? They were.
It's in the West.
Or the
Northern
West.
England has like the man has all different accents. In the South, they sound more like what we think of like proper British, except for like the Cockneys, like Tommy Robinson or whatever. But like in the West Country, it was an accent in that movie Hot Fuzz. You don't see it a lot, but I've noticed that like if you watch like an old Hammer film and they get like a farmer character, he talks like that. It doesn't sound far removed from what Americans in the South sound like. I mean, I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but the bottom line is that another generation, like there's not going to be people talking like me. And I'll be honest with you, if I can somehow have kids, I don't want my children talking like me. I know it sounds like, oh, you know, that you should be proud of it. I don't want them to sound like me. I don't want to sound like a gangster from a movie or something, because that's not what I am. You know, but it's just whatever. And also, I could talk Ebonics and shit, like, you know, like I said, like, you know, like, it was for my friends back in the day, like, you know, like, what's up, kid, you know, nah, like, that's the thing I say nah, nah, I'll say it, nah, you know, whatever, it's I mean, it's interesting, but it's just kind of like, it's a period of time of transition, and I've caught in all those things.
It's like consolidation and homogenization. I really like listening to different regional accents. I don't think any of them really bother me, but I probably talk like a bug person because my parents are foreigners, and so I had to learn how to talk neutrally. But you traveled a couple years ago. You traveled. I don't know how long ago it was, but I remember that you made kind of a big trip around the country a little bit.
Oh yeah, that was great. It was interesting to see that. I mean, in the Southwest is so beautiful. You know, it really is like an alien world, especially in New Mexico. It's just funny because it's like they say it's like the worst state in America. I mean, it's very poor, a lot of drinking, obviously, you know, but it's such a beautiful place, the Southwest. But, you know, it's going to go back to, you know, the Spanish.
Where were you when the Indian motel owner refused your service?
Oh, that was in Phoenix. I didn't like Phoenix because it was huge. I know Phoenix is like Los Angeles, like West or something. They say it's very much like a lot of people move out to Phoenix from LA. And it was a huge place. And I was there. I rolled in there when it was like 120-degree heat wave. So I could not believe how hot it was. And it was kind of cool. They had like the misters, by the, bar, outside bar, like, you know. But I went there, an Indian guy, I remember because he had 2 fingers, because I guess his hand got blown apart or whatever.
Is he like a Navajo or a Dothead?
No, he was, from the subcontinent of India.
Oh.
Okay. And he goes, I don't recognize your ID. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, I can't give you a room. So I have this guy, you know, basically not giving me a room. And I was like, whatever, dude, forget it. And I just left, and I found some other place. But it was just, yeah, Phoenix I didn't like too much.
Our mutual friend Nero the Pict was in that same area when the 2 gay guys that ran the hostel where he was staying sent him to a non-existent laundromat down the worst road in town, and he ended up getting attacked down there. Yeah. So where else did he go?
Well, basically, I mean, New Mexico, man. I keep bringing it up. It's like you can stare up at the stars and just get absorbed into the stars, the rainbows. You can see, you know, I want to take the rainbow back because I love I love rainbows, and you know, and I'm actually, I know this sounds funny, I'm a more tolerant person than you think. I know that I seem like I'm a very intolerant person. Nobody's a monolith. I have my friends. I finally have white friends now, like with James and other people I've met.
No, I completely believe you and understand, because that's part of this, right? Is that we grow up in this situation where there is all kinds of people and you don't have a tribe, and you find your little tribes as you can. And then it sounds like you're some kind of horrible, intolerant person, but it's not true.
Well,
yeah.
Get off on a tangent for a second. The irony is that my friends, I have my 3 best friends separate from James, and he still fits into that category, but you're familiar with him. My 3 best friends, who I've known, one I've known since the 80s, they're all mixed race people. Mixed, like, not just like, Irish and Italian or something. Like, one's Jamaican, he's part Chinese, one is Korean and, Irish.
My favorite mix.
Yeah.
That's like a war machine.
Yeah.
If I was Trump, I would have a breeding program. I'd be putting Korean women and Irish men together and making fighters. This thing looks like Johnny Weissmuller. I met him.
It does look like Johnny Weissmuller. And my other friend is a New Yorican, So all my friends have had the thing in common of that they're kind of outsider people that think for themselves, and we just found each other, and I'm loyal to them. I'll say it straight up. I'm loyal to them over some polo shirt, khaki wearing dude telling me about,
the greatness of Napoleon.
The greatness of Napoleon.
But you actually met that dude, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was he nice to you?
You could tell.
Did he treat you like a member of the same race?
When I was introduced to this person, his visual disdain for me was like very apparent.
Was he afraid that some of your like back hair was going to brush off on his sweater, his tweed sweater or something?
Yeah,
what was
it was. I'll just say like when I met him, it was very much a disdainful thing, and my reaction was like, oh, all right, whatever, fuck you, it's not whatever.
This is I think this is the guy that he ran the Midnight Torch rally.
Mr. Tiki Torch.
Mr. Tiki Torch, right?
Yeah.
Culture creating pollination.
That's what cracks me up about the Proud Boys is like half those guys are black or Mexican or Puerto Rican or whatever, and they're very funny to me. Hopefully, I'm not supporting the Proud Boys in terms of like looking for trouble, but it's a contrast, They look like they're having fun.
Gavin, like a lot of other people, should have read this guy's blog. Because this was like before the Trump, when Trump people were getting attacked at Trump rallies when the presidential election still wasn't in. This guy was giving the proper advice, and people didn't take it. And then the whole thing that happened in 2017 happened. It's just on the trip back is around the time, it was that 2017 time where I was just thinking about a lot of stuff. And I just realized, unfortunately, that, a lot of these guys they're not the guys. If you get what I'm saying, like in terms of, listen, I'm not a nationalist. Well, I don't know what I am anymore, but I'm pro, I don't want white people to be punished for stuff that nobody did. And I want people to be left alone. And that's the funny thing, is that in the end, most of us want to be left alone and live our lives, and that's not how the verse works. But these guys who are trying to fight it, I guess, I don't see them, like, their premises are still, we could turn this back to America it was in the 50s. Well, when your daughter's, she can't hear anything I'm saying, right?
She can't hear.
Okay. Yeah, and the bomb, fuck this country in the 1950s. And this guy, and I have James to thank for that, finally making that switch. This place is just a plantation. It's all the New World ever was, a plantation, right? And we grew up in the Puritan plantation or the Anglican, plantation. It's the economic zone. Making money with a religion that is not our religion, okay? Not the religion of the European peoples, going back. And now everything makes sense. The Christianity turning into, atheism, because that's what it's going to turn into. It's its next and final stage. Everyone is a commodity and everything, and it's always been like that, And going through America, I could see it like the Southwest should be with, Mexicans and Spanish and Indians again. If that makes any, I know it's going to be, in some ways for California it's going to be rough, but that's just that's just what it's going to go to.
I think most of the West should be whoever looks after the cattle. The Southwest can still, a lot of it can still support cattle, even though it's really arid. And, but I've been to Phoenix, and it's really scary to me to think about living in a place where if the power goes out, if the AC goes out, everybody will be dead in like a day or maybe 3 days, They would just be dead.
Yeah, 3 days is traditionally what you're given for dehydration.
Like
but
grandma would be dead by the end of the day. You know, your elderly would be dead within 24 hours, and then most everybody else would be just desiccated beef sticks. You know.
Florida, if that happened, Florida would be. I mean, you want to talk? I mean, you know, the heat that I saw in Phoenix was pretty rough, but it was dry. You go to Florida right now, it's
Florida's not.
Yeah, the American landfill will future will have a hard time in hot environments. What I think the future is for the pale face of the future, okay, no matter how small his range of dominance gets, he's going to be the migrant worker of the future. One of our friends is already doing this. He's going around fixing everything that his group of people designed that nobody else can fix. I was in Home Depot yesterday looking for a tool, and there were groups of ebony women wandering around looking for Caucasian male customers to show them what tool to buy and how to use it and what they need to do. I mean, it looked like a bunch of women on an island trying to marry Captain Bligh's crew. You know, I mean, it was just, there was nobody. The people that worked in that location seemed like they were all hired from the neighborhood, and none of them really knew anything. So the people came in there shopping from the neighborhood who were not of European descent. Instead of going to the guys that didn't know anything that were from the neighborhood, they were waiting for customers of the tool using race.
It's this dichotomy that I sent you that piece about the LAPD foot sterilization program or boot.
I'll tell this.
Okay, so and Trump made a tweet about like that the cops are getting sick just walking the beat. And so somebody in my local news said, well, this isn't true in San Francisco, but it is in Los Angeles, where the cops have, I think at least one cop came down with typhus or something like that. They picked up from the homeless. So they are ordering these high-tech little microwaves. I don't know what they are, maybe like a UV light or I don't know, but it's to sterilize your boots. You walk in, you step on this little box and sterilize the typhus and hepatitis off your boots. And so this is what I see, and now we're always hearing about automation, especially like self-driving cars. So we're going to get to the point where we have self-driving long haul, you know, big rigs, but the roads they won't be able to use the roads. You know, you have to have a good highway to be able to have a self-driving car.
That's the typhus. Were they bombed for 5 years nonstop and had no supplies or
okay, another one is that here closer by here in Oakland, a real estate developer went to the homeless encampment and offered each person $2,000 to get out of the homeless encampment so that he could build something.
Oh, that's cool. Now, the thing with whoever writes Judge Dredd, when they do another movie, you got to have the typhus Hep C curb stomp, where, you know, the police boots of the future are going to be so toxic that this is going to be like a torture device where you knock a hood rat down and say, look, I'm going to step on you with my treads, and all the creepy crawlies from the bowels of the universe are going to like tear you apart unless you tell me who you're working for. So that's something for the future.
It's just funny how, you know, you can see like the process, the managerial process, and the process becomes the goal, but you know, in the end, they can't keep the most basic things going. You can't, especially when you have no one left. I mean, even your high IQ, I hate the whole IQ thing. It's like, I understand it, but it gets played, it's very white to overplay that IQ number thing, right? You're not gonna have, even the high IQ group is not getting technical enough to know how to do anything.
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah. And, you're gonna end up with that, and whatever, when it happens, if, you know.
Well, this is why I postulated in the future when I wrote American Dreamboat. The protagonist, this young fella, his father's in prison because he's an unemployed Caucasian.
Right.
And unemployed Caucasians have to go to prison because the only jobs they can do are fixing things, and things aren't being built new anymore. Everything's used, and they're keeping it going. And, you know, the people you're bringing in from Guatemala and Nigeria aren't going to be fixing this stuff. So you're going to have to make sure you maintain like this, mechanical slave race in the future, where if you don't work, you're going to prison. And the only kind of work you're allowed to do is this here. And we're going to get people from the subcontinent.
That's why you're hoping for the Chinese liberation to come.
Well, I think, we got a young lady here.
You should be saying.
I don't know if we're going to be getting interviewed by a 6-year-old, but I think it would be entertaining. I predicted that Portland could be taken and held with a single platoon of the Chinese army.
Well,
you know, so that would be that would be a rescue of sorts.
Chinese, what did this guy say? Chinese vassal, white national.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was because it's. Well, there was that novel. Remember, there was this dystopian novel written by some Chinese woman, American woman, or whatever. It was about Baltimore, and it was about like the Chinese had bought up these cities that were all like, you know.
I saw that in Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's very PC and this and that. Hey, what's up?
Sorry about that.
Your daughter apparently couldn't figure out how to engage the sound. She was going to try to continue the podcast and you said.
Yeah, that's good. She will carry on the tradition.
So that's what we're talking about, the future or whatever. Yeah, the accents will disappear, you know, and probably not the southern accent because it's so pervasive. And, you know, we're talking about things not working. I mean, you have, you know, cholera epidemics next to like the latest iPhone release. So
you have this like two completely separate tracks of technology and competence, where in LA now, the very basic task of civilization, which is like hygiene, you know, keeping people in one spot without having them die of
camp fever.
Yeah. So that's failed. But at the same time, we also have these incredible high-tech boot sterilization devices. So
it'll be like Blade Runner, except like Blade Runner stuff worked still, you know. Except you'll have like Blade Runner, but like stuff doesn't work.
This is great. When I write the tale of Juan Stabone, okay, the novelette I'm going to do about the last good cop in Baltimore, he's going to be the one cop that refuses to get his boots sterilized.
You can have him stomping through blood and entrails. And
this is before the Camp of the Saints type. What is it? The aircraft carriers bringing in like
2048.
The
Nimitz class aircraft carriers will all be decommissioned, and I think you can get 10 to 15,000 people on one of those things if you kick all of those 10-ton jets overboard.
So my view of the future is like they call it this term black pill, right? It's like I understand the term, but it's like I can't stand it because if you bring up any kind of less than rosy picture of the future, you get called, you're black pilling, like you're hurting morale, and it's like, you know, while the ship is sinking and there's like flesh eating, like, you know, fish in the water, and people are yelling at you because it's all they can do, and you know, amongst the dissonant right, which I guess is the term that I like to use.
It's better than alt-right.
Alt-rock something, or, you know, I tell you that, like, I guess we could segue, like, with the Trump election, right? I knew for a fact, like, if Trump wins, you know, he's not gonna get anything done, right? But, you know, also I sound like I'm really smart. No, but I just knew it because, you know, he's not gonna change the system. Well, that's only been reinforced to me now when you see.
Now, what's the analogy that you like to use about Trump as a zombie apocalypse person in the group? He said this over and over again.
No, I used to think, I changed my mind on that. I used to think, like, all right, we're going to stuff him, you know, we got to get Trump elected again. Just like, we're just stuffing his body in the doorway while we jump out the back.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's accurate.
I used to think that, but now, you know, and James has done it, and what's his name? That writer, one of the best writers, in my opinion, who gets it is this guy Gregory Hood. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. I think he has another name too that's on V there, but I could be wrong. But like Gregory Hood is like one of the few guys that actually nails the analysis of a lot of things. Trump has just galvanized, this process because he's a historical conduit. He's not, I mean, he's a big mouth guy from New York that half of his thing is selling himself. I used to hate him when I was a kid. He was just a local celebrity. And now I kind of think that he's a guy, he's just a big mouth guy, but who had good intentions. And he has shown once and for all, I mean, he's actually done a great job showing the mask falling off of what really rules us, And,
yeah. And this is why on the Democratic side, some of the early Trump supporters got excited about Andrew Yang and Tulsi. And I think that's fine to get excited for whatever reason. But if you think that Tulsi is going to have any luck ending the wars when Trump hasn't done it, you had Jim Mattis stomping out of the playground with his ball because Trump said that he wanted to end the war and he wanted to withdraw from Syria. And then you have Jim Mattis like, no, you can't do that. I'm going to leave the playground. And so Tulsi is very nice, I'm sure, but there's no way she's going to have any more luck than he does.
I'd give her Montana.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much the ultimate, just my opinion, the ultimate truth of it is that if Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard became the president, guess what? We would still be bombing Syria. We'd still be threatening Russia. And we'd still be putting everyone and their mother in here to just hang out and still have white people be demonized every day.
Yeah.
So it's a system. This is what it wants. It does the bit of our friends and others and traders and a system. And some of it's unconscious. Some of this is just historic drift and interests that take a life of their own that just keep going in the same direction and drag us all inexorably with its gravity, and that's the scary part of it that starts getting into like Lovecraft territory where a lot of this stuff is like on autopilot, but sometimes you wonder, like I remember when I was with James in the cemetery in Baltimore, we were looking for the last dude that died in World War I. He was a Baltimorean. He literally died like in the last 2 seconds of the war, and he actually brought about his own death because he had the cool commander, not like these other guys that had their guys go over the top and get killed in the last 10 minutes of the war for their glory. This cemetery we went to, it's a Baltimore cemetery.
Holy Redeemer Cemetery, that's where it is, Craven.
We went there and we were looking for this guy. It's a tragic story. When I was there, it was up on a hill and I saw Baltimore. I saw the pier. I saw the cemetery. I felt something that I have never felt before. I felt like this malevolent force. Now this sounds like all crazy stuff. I'm not saying what it is. I'm just saying like I felt like the universe is malevolent, and really that Schopenhauer said that, Nietzsche kind of, maybe not Nietzsche, but like Schopenhauer was about that, and Spengler and all these guys, the historical process part. Bottom line I'm saying is like some of this stuff is just not, like, it's not controllable because it's not even, like, no one really, like, we're puppets.
Well, I think that we're peasants in a collapsing empire, and if you're talking about the 1950s, everything seemed grand because that was, in a way, maybe the peak of, like, American influence and American expansion, and they hadn't gotten around to, like, destroying the middle class, for whatever reason. So people, nobody, I don't know, maybe very few people would have thought anything that has happened since then they would have believed you, right? So from here, it looks awful. Everything looks, I try not to black pill personally. I have small children, but things don't look good.
I think things look great.
Not for little kids. I mean, and that's the thing we have to talk about with James too in future podcasts is, what happens when the empire is collapsing. It does look like the universe just hates you, and
well, it's at least I was lied to when I was a kid. I was told that that there would be no need for me to defend myself, and if I did get attacked, I was to tell authority figures. And then when you tell authority figures, you get attacked and beat up again. And the other self-defense advice I got from my parents was, don't ever try to use a weapon to defend yourself, because whoever's attacking you will just take it off of you and use it against you. Okay, so that was the way I was taught by people who grew up in the 1950s. Now, people have the opportunity to actually teach their kids the way the world is. You know, kids can deal with the world the way it is, but unless you lie to them about it. I would rather be a kid today if I was a kid today whose parents were actually raising me with my interests in mind as opposed to their social conventions in mind, that would be great. I mean, you would be able to really screw over countless other lesser kids.
Yeah.
It would just there would be a smorgasbord of social manipulation for the wily kid that actually got the actual education as opposed to being brainwashed, just being taught how the world really is. And now there's actually enough evidence that you could teach your kid the truth without looking like a John Birch Society.
Yeah. I agree with that because, you know, there are certain things my parents told me that I dismissed, and now there's lots of evidence for it, and, you know, I can show my my kids, and it's more effective. And I mean, I'm pretty open with them about what's going on. Like, they see whatever I'm working on here, they see, so they've seen all these images that I've been editing for another book, and they see whatever videos that I'm sending to James. So it's like, here's a video of people getting beat up in Portland for Antifa, and I explained to them, like, well, there's people out there who want to look for trouble and look for fights and stuff, and, you know, sometimes they come after you, but sometimes people go looking for it. And so I try, but just maybe it's a California thing, partly because of the population replacement is really already achieved here, and the real estate prices are so out of reach that I just feel like there's not a good future for my kids here, and that's really hard. Getting personal here.
Have to find a better place for them. But that, you know, Plantation America is finding its roots.
Right.
It's getting back in touch with what it is, and things are starting to get more like what they were. And, it's a natural process, but your kids will have the advantage of having somebody that they trust that will actually be able to give them accurate information and dispel all the lies that are going to be swimming around them.
All right.
You know, I mean, it's kind of scary because your children they're not going to be able to grow up agreeing with the whole bunch of their peers. But, you know, agreeing with a whole bunch of your peers has rarely been a real good idea, historically speaking. You know. That's usually what happens, like, right before, you know, the Praetorian Guards unleashed on you, and you all get butchered.
Lynn, it's like you've been taught the rules of the game, and then halfway through the game, they've changed the rules, but they've already changed it after you made your plays, and now you're like trying to catch up now, or, you know, or the Matrix is once again that metaphor where you realize that, oh my God, the future is going to be a slow motion science fiction horror apocalypse, and a lot of it really wears on people. But you know, James's thing about the plantation system, I mean, his plantation work has pretty much freed me of any kind of Americanism in my head. It explains so many things, you know, the matrix of it, just going back to it, why cops are always on you, why, you know, that, this and that, different groups being used against you for the purpose, you know, of this and that. It explains a lot of things. And you said your parents are immigrants, right?
Right.
Okay. I have to thank whoever, God or whatever, for having immigrant grandparents. You know, my dad's parents were born here, first generation, but my mother's family are German refugees. I would call them German war refugees. Okay? And my grandfather, you know, he died about a decade ago. He was a German soldier in World War II. And I used to look at the guy in a certain way, you know, like you're raised to. And he's been right about so many things now. I wish I could, when I met him, I wish I could have picked his brain more. And he was kind of a salty guy, but he had been through a lot. And the thing with me, and this ties into, I guess, I mean, maybe I'll damn myself here, but And I know, yeah, you have to survive. I want your children to survive and thrive. And how we're going to do that, we don't know. But to me, America is getting what it deserves. And,
I have to separate the people though from the government, and it's a democracy or whatever, but the voting is a joke, and it's always been a joke, so I can't hold the American citizens responsible for all the evil that the American government has done.
yeah, so I guess I'm a little, I can't.
I see the citizens as the government should.
Because in the end, whether you tolerated everything from, like what James' point he makes about, like, after World War II, like, if you watch an old silent film, right? I love watching old movies. You watch an old film, and the average viewpoint of the viewer is pretty, like, kind of anti-authoritarian. Cops are not like a lot of old movies where, like, the average person, there's a reason why they like Dillinger. There's a reason why they had a romantic notion for outlaws and stuff. You can go back to the plantation era for these kind of things. But you can also go to, that war, the second war comes. And then everything afterwards is you obey the government, you worship authority, this and that. My mother's people are being genocided right now. Okay. And people go, oh, well, like I have an argument with someone close to me. Like, oh, look at Germany. What they're doing to their people. It's like they're doing it because this country, took them over. I mean, as much as I hated the Soviet Union, as my grandfather called them the Bolsheviks, whenever he talked about them, and by the way, he was very clear to differentiate the Russians and Ukrainians from the Bolsheviks. So I grew up with one side of my family, they were GIs, and I grew up with the other side of my family was a German soldier in Russia, and there was like 4 other relatives, male relatives I had, and they all died. There was one other who survived other than my grandfather. And so I heard my grandfather's stories about the war on the Eastern Front, and it was human stories. He would talk about it. He would talk about horrible things in terms of the aftermath, but he would never talk about the action of it. The other side of the family, there's stories I don't want to repeat that were talked about, and James had mentioned it also about someone he knew, his family members bragging about what they did in France. Yeah, these are American soldiers.
Yeah, I remember the guy, I was playing a game of Panzer Leader in the dining room of this house, and the uncle, 2 uncles and the father of the guy I was playing with had, one uncle served in Korea, lost his mind. The other uncle served as an ambulance driver, after D+4, and the other uncle was in the 101st Airborne, and he was busting the chops of the 2 other brothers, bragging about him and the other guys in the 101st Airborne raping French women.
Yeah.
It's like spoils of the prize. While, MisterGrey here has Italian American GI ancestors who were also bragging about similar war crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was presented to me as like it was funny, and that's what, when my grandfather, my mother's father talks about, it already gave me an outsider perspective. Even when I was at my most left wing, I was like, my grandfather was German, and it gives me this outsider kind of in between world thing. He brought his family here because he lived not far from the Russian sector. Okay, the Red Army, we don't have to talk about what the Red Army did in the East, right? Historically, the greatest, like probably one of the biggest mass rapes in history, which is okay because they're German. Okay, and as I get older, I take this more personal, and you say, oh, you're trying to find an identity. I'm not stupid. If I went to Germany now, or even back then, I would have been an alien. I realize that. But as I get older, I don't like seeing people of my ethnic group, and this is probably, this is in the end what I am. I don't like seeing people of my ethnic group demonized constantly, and my mother's people were the first. They were the ones in the modern paradigm today, okay, from our friends, who basically demonize these people. And now they're demonizing all of you. Even the people that fought and destroyed my mother's people, you're the same. You're all the same. And now, this is part of this matrix that's now acting on us. I'm not just saying it's the whole thing, but that's what gives you my angry edge where, to me, America, this place can, whatever happens to it, it's deserved. You want it to help the evil side in this conflict, this is what you get. I know it sounds like I'm being a real asshole, but that's how I feel. It doesn't change the fact that we have to survive in it, and I want people that look like me and you and James, to still be around, because that's, to the fact that you have to even explain that as being something that, well, it should be.
Yeah, you don't have to justify that. You don't have to justify that.
Right, in words. Meanwhile, of course, we know the only justification is, surviving in this world of struggle.
One contrast, when I'll put this in the book on military history that I'm writing, probably the last volume. MisterGrey's grandfather, who actually went as far as my cop at the Caucasus, actually met Muslim guys with back-dragged camels.
Yeah.
Men in his unit executed one of their own because he raped a Russian woman.
Yeah.
Okay. And see, this is one problem with getting so far away of being men. Like, we had 5 of us today beat each other up at a gym that's run by one of us. And you can learn a lot of truth with that. I've had to try to explain this to people. A friend of mine that reads horror stories, and he's like, how come the German army is always the bad guys in all these horror stories? And I heard they did this and that and everything, and about all the atrocities that are ascribed to the German army and only the German army. And I told him, I said, look, the 2 armies that we hear committed all these atrocities were the Confederates in the U.S. and in the 1800s, and the Germans in Europe in the 1900s. Realistically, the best militaries don't engage in undisciplined behavior, including mass rapes of people and so on. Alexander the Great was a big stickler for this, by the way. He was the best conqueror ever. The stories of atrocities against civilians in the American Civil War are all one way. They are all committed by the Union against everybody of all races, all genders, on all sides. The people raping people were working class Yankees. In World War II, the people raping people were working class Yankees. But people with a warrior culture, like the Confederacy during the American Civil War and the Wehrmacht during World War II, you hardly ever saw this. This was an aberration. And the answer is, if you let one of the men in your unit rape some Russian woman when he's supposed to be getting more ammunition for the MG-34, then you're part of a failed effort. Okay, because the priority is to kill the enemy, not to abuse their non-combatants. All of the worst things that come with the feminization of the West and the way our military is so disgusting and conducts so many war crimes on every level, the fact that all these negatives have been put onto our past enemies, the Confederacy and the German Wehrmacht, is pretty telling. I mean, it's a case of pure projection. Uh-oh. So I actually end up covering that with the final volume of the Dread Grace series. I decided it's going to be 4 volumes, but so it all fits together. And with guys I talked to that went through Korea and Vietnam as well, and have gone through other conflicts.
There was a town in Italy that had been under German occupation and was safe until the end of the war. And then the Moroccan soldiers landed there on the way back somewhere, I guess, and just did a mass rape as well.
Did all the communist partisan Italian guys, did they avenge that? Really?
We know the answer.
Yeah, we know the answer. But I'm just saying, as an example of that.
But so that's really important that people that had effective militaries have to be demonized as demonstrating the bad behavior that really only ineffective militaries demonstrate. So it's so interwoven into our culture, and it goes along with what my parents told me about don't defend yourself. It'll end badly, that there's just a negative connotation to any type of, fighting for,
it's funny how
for your cause.
Projection is something that it's been done a lot since the war.
It's really, I call it the Great Crusade now. I'm so sick of calling it World War II. I'm so sick of World War II as far as material goes, because, it's such a tiny slice of history, and it's like it's basically all of our history.
That's half your Barnes and Noble history section right there.
Right.
Yeah. I just call it the Great Crusade. I mean, it's like the foundation of some false dark age.
So that's something that, to me, it gives me it's given me the wedge that I may not have had if I had come from a different background. It's like growing up in the city at the time when I did. being around, a lot of different things, good, bad, and whatever.
Doing with the Moroccan occupation force,
Right.
for instance.
Yeah, it's given me that in-between perspective, which unfortunately, it makes you not part of something, I guess, but it gives you the perception to see things outside the box. The whole idea is not to take that resentment and resentiment and go for the easy siren call of what they want to do. That's why I was a leftist when I was in my 20s, because I was so disgusted with things but didn't know why. And so, of course, who tells you to be a rebel against the system? The left, liberals, leftism, this and that. That's what you're allowed to resist or whatever this thing. It's the only option you have.
It's pre-approved rebellion.
It's pre-approved rebellion. It doesn't threaten it. It's like, Antifa. There's not one Antifa son of a bitch sitting in jail. Meanwhile, guys in Charlottesville who are fighting back against black dudes attacking them and Antifa attacking them, like 2 of the guys have like 10-year stretches. I'm not even going to bring up that other dude, what they did to him, regardless of what you think happened or not. He got railroaded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
especially in contrast to, like, I always talk about the Kate Steinle case where a guy is 100% known to have shot this woman in public and was acquitted of her murder.
Well, it's given, I think those two things are very important messages. It's letting, the system's letting you know.
Right.
Who's allowed to use force and who's not allowed to use force.
Right.
So it's at least you're getting, even though it's not explicit, you are getting the new rules of the game.
Right.
You just have to be able to see them. Now you're going to have to get going soon, aren't you, young lady?
Yeah, we should probably wrap up. It's almost 2 hours.
I know why the 4-hour, 5-hour podcast now, because you can sit here and talk all friggin' day.
You're awful bouncy when you sit there. What type of device do you sit on?
I sit on an exercise ball, like a Swiss ball thing.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, that's supposed to be healthier for you than
yeah.
sitting
Plus,
in
I
the
don't have to.
chair.
I don't have to worry about a chair chewing up the carpet or having space for it. It kind of fits under the desk and disappears.
You could do bench presses on those too. I've seen the videos. You can actually do bench presses, using that as a bench press.
Yeah, not me. I won't be doing that.
You can throw it at a home invader too. It's pretty bouncy.
Yeah, and you know what? It might be an approved weapon too, because you wouldn't hurt them.
Yeah.
It could be just enough to convince them that they were misbehaving, so that they would then tender their apology. You go down to the services building first and get it translated, and then tender the apology. Okay?
I've had it since I was pregnant for the first time, and I started getting that SI joint pain. I don't know if you guys have ever enjoyed that, but I was.
Oh, the coccyx.
Yeah, like where the sacrum bone and iliac bone meet.
Yeah,
I haven't borne as many children as you have. I've had some pain in that area. I had to do with other stuff.
Yeah, well, the pelvis starts kind of coming apart there, but it's actually went back to normal. So, but I bought this ball.
Question?
Can
I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Like, I know you're running out of time, but so you have like a homestead or a farm or something?
No, not at all. I really wish we did. No, we just live in a little rental out here in Slavicon Valley. It's a suburban spot. I kind of pretend to be a homesteader sometimes. I make pickles and stuff like that, but
if I ever went to California, the only place I'd want to go, I want to go to Robinson Jeffers' house in Carmel. How is that up there? Is that beautiful up there?
Beautiful. Very beautiful. It's on the coast, and it's a beautiful little tourist town. Actually, I told you about it once, James. Monterey, Carmel. It's a really nice spot. It's kind of cool in summer, usually foggy. The coast here tends to be cool.
Yeah, that movie The Fog, the John Carpenter movie The Fog is one of my favorite movies.
Hey, did you not tell me that record low temperatures were recorded in coastal waters?
The waters was colder than it had been in at least 30 years. Yeah, it's always cold here. I remember this. So I grew up near the coast with like surf town culture, And in 1998, there was an El Nino and the water was really warm. And so people were swimming without wetsuits. That was the warmest. And that's like, if you look at the real global warming data, is the warmest year. 98, everything started cooling down.
And you recently had an earthquake in California, right?
We had 2 big ones in Southern California. I didn't feel either one, although other people up around here did feel it, the second one. But yeah, those were good size, both over 6 point on the Richter scale. Those are good size ones.
Casey of the Earthquake and Volcano Prediction Society, decreased sunspot activity caused increased volcanism, earthquakes, and should coincide with increased precipitation, which we've had all over the country.
It's the wettest. Last year was the wettest year on record. That's one I bookmarked for you, but I didn't send it to you.
Okay, well, I'm feeling better about Reverend Chandler all the time.
I welcome an ice age. I do. I welcome an ice age. It's fine with me. It's going to take more. Well, let's say I remember clearly the 1989 earthquake, which is known as the Loma Prieta earthquake, and that was either 6.9 or 7, between 6.9 or 7.1, depending who you ask. And there's a double-decker bridge on the San Francisco Bay called the Bay Bridge that pancaked and killed people. And since then, all the maintenance on the bridges have been done with Chinese steel and Chinese concrete, and people actually get like chunks of concrete falling on their cars just here and there. You know, something fell on my car. Oh, a little piece of the bridge fell on my car. So could be really ugly if we get something like that.
Well, that's brilliant to sell all these crappy materials to your enemy in an earthquake-prone region, and you could just land your division of Chinese soldiers.
Oh, they're already here.
Wait.
Lynn,
no, you have the clerks are already there. The supply depot people are already set up. You haven't gotten the soldiers yet.
Okay.
Chinese, and I'm someone, and I have respect for the Chinese and Chinese culture and a lot of different things about the Chinese. But you got to read a story by Jack London. It's one of his science fiction stories called The Unparalleled Invasion. I'm familiar with it.
I still have to read that.
You got to read that story. I'm sure they're going to take down his statues or whatever he has, because of that. But you got to read that story in terms of what the Chinese dominating the future. What his thing is going to be on that. Me personally, China deserves to take over the world. This place, deserves to be like put in the dress and humiliated or whatever.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there.
Okay, well, what would we? Okay, one final thing. If we were to put Uncle Sam in a dress, what would his female name be? There's a name chain that comes with these sex changes, right?
Oh yeah, you have to choose a new life, a new name, yeah.
Aunt Samantha? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, every other drag queen now has a beard. You think that's okay, so he could probably still, keep his, whatever. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. The Chinese and the Russians deserve to dominate, and whatever happens in the future. But you know what? If this is used against me, I am loyal to America and federal government. Go USA.
Should we pledge the flag together?
I had to do that. We used to do that in school, I remember. I still went to
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
The plantation. Hey, you know what? Like I said, I'm still a very tolerant person, and this is my disclaimer, in a different world, I would still be, I guess I still am a liberal at heart.
You're a liberal.
Yeah, but in the end, you can still see that what was tolerated is now, now being used to smash us and get rid of us. And I don't think that the existence of those different things means that they were bad. They're being used. But I resent that. I resent my tolerance and my open-mindedness being used. All of our qualities, our good qualities, hard work, wanting to stay out of trouble. I hate that that's been used against us and used against us for malevolent aims. That's all I'll say.
I think it's a good thing. That's our benefactors have been kind enough to
actually,
wake
he's
us
right.
up.
The solution, in the end, is going to be for the best because at least we'll have no illusions. But then again, don't say that about people. You can have
the good
illusions for
Samaritan of our age is going to be is the violent immigrant. He's the Samaritan. The violent illegal immigrant is the Samaritan. He's letting us know what's up.
I'm waiting.
You're going to be disappointed, James, because we went to, I saw some video on Twitter, some girl at some border station, and they're interviewing a pregnant woman. Okay, she's doing all right. They're interviewing another woman who just had gastric bypass surgery, and now she needs special attention at the border patrol station. Okay?
So
they're not sending their best. They're not sending their warriors. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this so-called refugee has just had gastric bypass surgery?
All you have to do is to let these people come, collect welfare, and breed. And then, because the indigenous criminal population has not been able to grow itself beyond 13%. So this is being used to rectify that. That's a problem, okay? The boys at headquarters saw this was a problem, and they couldn't get any action at Planned Parenthood. They wouldn't stop chucking brown babies in the dumpster. So, you're going to have to bring in reinforcements. So, it's going to take another generation, bring in a bunch of mamas, breed another,
Well, you'll like, there's one that you would like that, for U.S.-born anchor babies. Actually, one looked like he had some 13% in him too, and they robbed a pawn shop.
They robbed a pawn shop.
They robbed a pawn shop, got a bunch of guns, and killed a sheriff. And they're all U.S. born.
All right. Well, this is looking up. It's the lines of the clouds are perpetually lined with silver, in my view.
And all your Democrat candidates, they want full coverage for people just coming in the country.
We'll be able to write, in the future, realistic action stories that don't involve secret agents, because it's all going to be out in the open.
Yeah.
Okay? So, a knucklehead like me won't have to learn all of this, all this intelligence mumbo jumbo to be able to write a thriller. I'll just be able to, write.
One more quick question before you leave.
Sure, yeah.
Are you gonna vote for Trump again, or are you gonna?
I probably will. I mean, it doesn't matter because I live in California, so my vote.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, my vote doesn't count for anything. So, sure, why not? I don't care.
Here's the big question. Are you going to lie in the exit poll after you vote for Trump?
I've never been exit polled. I think I vote by mail, which means probably my vote gets changed when it gets to the...
Well, that's right. Your vote ends up in the trunk of some social worker's phone, right?
Yeah. All right,
Where I live, my vote could make a difference. I live in one of the states now that was swing state. I live in a swing state. Do you think I should vote for Trump again or not?
I can't ask you to vote. I do think that it's better if Trump wins. I just think it's better because whatever tiny slim hope there is, maybe is so I do want him to win, and I think he will win again, but I can't go out and try to convince people of that.
It'll be more entertaining. If Trump wins again, it will be more entertaining, and that's the highest value.
I'll give you my answer. I was thinking of not voting, but I am going to vote for Trump. The same reason, pretty much, that I voted for him the first time, is that I want to see people, if there's a chance of seeing the people I hate lose their time, that alone is, that was still worth it. That night, me and my friend.
Absolutely.
And the Korean Irish guy.
I was dancing on Mother's living room.
We were drinking champagne. It was a beautiful night.
I loved it. So I will vote for him again. It'll probably bring more heat on us. He may lose, but I just want to, if there's a chance to make the people I hate just like lose their minds and cry and strip their clothes off on TV and defecate on the counter. I'll do that.
As a neutral observer, ethically, I can't vote.
Okay.
The zoological department at Regal.
Your alien, yeah.
Would probably revoke my grant.
Wait,
Your license.
No,
I can't own property. I'm an extraterrestrial.
Doesn't own property, so he can't vote anyway.
and you know what? I lost my slave. Tony kept stevedore.
Oh, Tony.
You lost in a game of craft.
Yeah. I mean, so it's probably going to be a blues guitar studio, my little place out in this. Right.
You get the egg carton shells and line the walls. Oh, man.
Mr. Gray, I hope you can join us again sometime.
No,
Outstanding guest.
Right. This is the first time I've ever been a guest on any kind of anything. So I have a solo YouTube channel, but I'll leave that for people to find out on their own.
For the detectives out there can find it.
The triggered people. But this was fun. I like to speak, interact with people, you can talk to, and I can, I keep my accent a little under wraps, which is nice. I'm talking to intelligent people. I want to speak intelligently with people with fun humor and stuff like that. So, man.
Well, I am very much a lover of listening to people and people that sound different. My parents are non-native speakers, and many people in my life have been non-native speakers, teachers and bosses and friends and everybody. So I'm used to the non-native aspect of having an accent, and I really enjoy American regional accent and other Anglophone accents as well, South African and Australian and all those guys. So.
They got the coolest accents. If you hear an old South African guy, that guy was like a soldier in one of those border war things or something.
Yeah.
Like they got it's a shame what's happening to that place, but you gotta worry about our place, huh?
We met Lloyd DeJohn at at a martial arts seminar, and it was really funny. He said to Nero the Peck, he said, "Hello, I'm Lloyd. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa." And Nero the Peck said, "Hello, I'm so and so. I'm from Cape Town, Maryland."
That's funny.
Exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I've worked with South Africans, and it took me a while to learn their accent, but it's a nice one too. So don't feel ever, at least on my part, that there's any problem with that.
One thing I do like to do, if I'm in front of a hipster or some out-of-towner, pale face who thinks that they're high and mighty, I like to put my accent on real thick. I didn't do that with Napoleon, but I do that. I like to
Napoleon Bonaparte.
I like to do that in front of people I don't, that put their nose up at me where I used to live. Anyway.
Shout out, Richie.
All right, that was episode 60 of the Crackpot Podcast with special guest Mr. Gray. Thanks for joining.
It's getting late and we've got shit to do. in outer space. Mother Earth can wait. We will take the ones worth saving. Pack your bags, we are vacating now. Forever, forever. There's a cosmic radio in my head, and it's reading news articles, and the correspondent sadly said the universe is flat. He also mentioned that gravity is caused by our cavities and our reflection of time's not a receding hairline, it's all mass produced in the back of our mind. Let's face it, there's some things that we will never know, and I don't ever want to know. And so it goes. Let's fuck it up, let us run amok. Let's do the things that we want to do. We're animals after all. Out yonder, through the traffic and the people